Naruto, Pain's philosophy. Now, Sage's Reign is an awesome channel. They bring up such great topics such as philosophy of characters, certain character analysis, series analysis, and Pain, for all intents and purposes, is a very interesting and much fan beloved character from Naruto, specifically Naruto Shippuden, going from Nagato having to live through the trauma and events that were the Third Great Shinobi World War, having to get betrayed by Hanzo and Danzo working together, and ultimately becoming the leader of the Akatsuki, the international funny T word organization, YouTube TOS. So yeah, no, Pain is definitely one of those that is a very interesting character, and my experience in the TCG as well, Pain absolutely broke the TCG by being Void Element, but that's neither here nor there. Let us get into Sage's Reign's analysis on the philosophy of pain.
And now, this world shall know pain. Almighty push.
Shinra Tensei is great.
To learn about Pain's philosophy, first, we must look at Pain's backstory to understand why his reasoning is the way it is, and what influenced his mind and his actions. Pain was not always known as Pain, but as Nagato. Nagato was born in the village hidden in the rain during the Second Shinobi War.
Oh, second, my bad.
As a child, Madara Uchiha implanted the Rinnegan into Nagato's eyes.
That was one of those weird Deus Ex Madara-isms, because the story definitely was going with Nagato was the one that awakened the Rinnegan suddenly, and Nagato was the one that was able to tap into that power and master the Rinnegan, arguably, according to some people, more so than Madara was ever able. Like, Madara was able to kind of brute force some of it. We know that Obito, specifically when he had his Sharingan Rinnegan combo, right, White Mask Obito, canonically, he was able to use the other paths of pain. He was able to use Animal Path, Preta Path, Human Path, Asura Path, Tendo. That's not the one I'm looking for. Deva Path, right? You know, he was able to use all of those paths of pain. The kind of hand wavy thing that was explained was when he was talking with Naruto and B. I think Guy and Kakashi were there as well. I think they had gotten into the fight at that point. Was saying that I think it was Kakashi that pointed out that yeah, but we know all the Rinnegan jutsu that you can use because they all collectively fought Pain except for technically Killer B. I say, well, technically, yeah, I don't think B ever actually fought Pain. That was Utakata though. And so yeah, he was like, yeah, no, I could do this, but at the chakra cost that it would do, you know, take on Obito, as well as them knowing what to expect, it just wasn't worth it. So Obito could have used all the paths of pain that Pain had access to. However, Madara really only showcased like Preta Path. He showcased Preta Path by being able to absorb chakra, absorb ninjutsu. He didn't use Human Path to, you know, rip people's souls out. He didn't use Animal Path because he tried to summon the QB, but because it was sealed inside of Naruto, he wasn't able to summon the QB. And he could just whip out his Susanoo anyway. So, I mean, he didn't really need to use Animal Path if he had access to it. I'm assuming he has access to it, but Nagato, for all intents and purposes, had more mastery over it, if that makes sense.
The Rinnegan's abilities only emerged out of self-defense after his parents were murdered in front of his eyes by two Konoha shinobi.
Which was later Deus Ex Madara. He had caused their murders.
The timid Nagato was forced
under
to leave his
Genjutsu
home in search for food and shelter. Nagato ended up making friends and grew up alongside them, as Yahiko and Konan became his best friends and his family. The trio were eager to learn ninjutsu, but also to find food.
It comes down to the Hidden Mist Village was, for all intents and purposes, a war-torn region during that Second Shinobi World War. Nagato, Yahiko, and Konan were orphans. They were in a state that was constantly in the middle of the Hidden Rain, Amagakure, being consistently in the middle of warfare, being consistently in the middle of these larger warring nations, and therefore just caught in the middle. So yeah, when you have someone like Hanzo the Salamander, as great a reputation as they have, coming out of just random backwater village for all intents and purposes, compared to Konoha, right? Compared to, you know, Kirigakure, you know, Kusagakure, right? No, Kusa's grass. I'm trying to remember what Stone Village was. But anyways, you get what I mean, right? Out of these larger nations, the fact that you had Hanzo the Salamander being titled Hanzo the Salamander for one, two, being of such power and renown that he kind of kept the Rain Village autonomous, which is actually a really big feat. But this is further commentary from Naruto on, I think it is Iwa, thank you, Iwa Gakure. It's further commentary on the nature of war and being in the middle of all of this, but also being, a child subject in the middle of such a conflict-riddled environment. And it's Kip, Naruto's so nerdy. Naruto's so old school. Why do you watch Naruto? Why do you play the CCG? Because this series is actually really brilliant.
It was later on they came across the three Seinen of the Leaf, where Jiraiya would engage them. After Jiraiya discovered Nagato's powerful eyes, he decided to train the three ninjutsu, seeing the potential of Nagato as the Sage of Six Paths, or the possible reincarnation. The three later went on
to be
form
fair,
the Akatsuki, with a goal to bring peace and end war. They amassed many members and followers, as the Rain was a land of suffering. Every single ninja war used the Rain's location, which was in the middle of the Land of Fire, as a battle.
There's Kusagakure right there specifically. It's between the leaf and the stone. That's where Hidan was from my understanding.
Ground. Countless people.
I think no, it was a hot springs. I can't remember. He had a weird one.
The Akatsuki's goal generated hope for these individuals. But this success would not last very long, as they were now in the Third Shinobi War. Hanzo of the Salamander was no longer interested in peace, but now preserving his power. And so alongside Danzo's...
Yeah, Danzo is such a divisive character. Like, I love to hate Danzo because he's written that well. Danzo has his fingers in a lot of different situations and different plots and different... He's just in so much political subterfuge over not just Konoha, but other nations as well. And he's just a shinobi of all time, which I love that you have when it does come down to Naruto versus Sasuke versus Danzo. It is a fight to effectively gut that darkness, quote unquote, from the leaf in Itachi's name, even though Sasuke's philosophy at that time wasn't necessarily the best.
Anbu, he ambushed the three friends, threatening to kill Konan if Nagato did not kill Yahiko. Yahiko ended up taking his own life at the hands of Nagato's kunai, encouraging the Rinnegan user to change the world as he wanted to. This enraged Nagato, as he retrieved Konan from their clutches, but he was immobilized in the process.
Y'all ever just summon a demon dragon?
Of his best friend and the realization of the world, Nagato's philosophy was born, and thus the six paths of pain were also born, using Yahiko's body and the bodies of Jiraiya's former enemies. Pain believed that achieving peace through friendship and uniting individuals was a naive and brash way of looking at achieving peace, imprudent even. Pain believed the world was in a never-ending cycle of hatred and death, and that the only way to achieve true peace was through the experience of war, essentially by knowing pain.
And that's the thing, and that's actually a very toxic mindset that I've definitely met people who have this as a core philosophy that they have. It's, I have gone through X. You can never truly understand something until you have gone through X. To a degree, that is true. There is a grain of truth in that, right? I can't say that I understand what it's like when somebody, memes at a service member near them, right, in their life, like, hey, you got Firewatch, right? And they'll just wake up, right? Like, I can try to understand and I can try to empathize, but I can't truly understand, right? There are things that I've been through that I don't necessarily talk about a whole heck of a lot for valid reasons, right? But it's like, do I get to necessarily sit on some high horse and be like, well, you didn't go through this, so you just can't understand this? No, you can empathize kind of the crappy situations I've been in and other people have been in, and, be grateful that you haven't been through those situations. But true understanding to that true understanding just isn't there. And I think that's what pain capitalizes on. That's what Nagato capitalizes on is, I went through this. I went through war. I went through all of this turmoil. Until you go through it, you will not understand. Not necessarily even giving them the chance to try and empathize, to try and learn, to try to be better. His philosophy is to inflict that pain upon others, to force them to understand, and to not allow them the chance to potentially be different, the chance to grow, that chance to be the difference. And that's, it goes round and round and round.
Virtue of this, he set out a new plan. Pain, with the help of the new members of the Akatsuki, which would be comprised of the strongest rogue shinobi from the hidden villages, he would assemble them and send them off to different villages in order to pursue every single Jinchuriki. He was after the tailed beasts. His plan was to capture every single tailed beast and release them upon every village. And once every village has felt destruction and loss, once every person has felt pain, they would cease to fight each other, thus creating peace. Pain's philosophy is possible through understanding. Once everyone has felt the same pain, they would not want to experience it again. They would all understand what pain feels like.
But that's the thing, is that also doesn't take into account the people that relish in it and that would want to perpetuate that. Take Hidan, for instance, right? An absolute just maniac who his entire style, quote unquote, his entire form of combat is engaging in Joshin ritual, having others harm him so it harms them. And he delights in this. That's what he does. Do you think someone like Kakuzu is going to necessarily be fine with this endgame, right? He's a bounty hunter. He's someone that is just in it for the money. He's someone that is power for power's sake to a degree, has engaged in potentially taboo, forbidden jutsu, right? Having the multiple hearts, that kind of thing. And that's just to name a couple of them, right? Do you think Kisame would necessarily be okay with this? Or do you think that much of the Akatsuki, as broken as they are, as traumatic events as some of them have been through, do you think that they'd be okay with that standpoint? Which does feed into that hypocrisy that Chad is mentioning, that hypocrisy of why Nagato was even susceptible to talk no jutsu in the first place. It is a hypocritical stance.
Which breeds peace. Pain was utilitarianism, a theory created by the philosopher Jeremy Bentham that focuses on results rather than rules. Essentially, Pain's methods were for the greater good. The lives that were lost was for the greater good because more people would end up surviving as a result of Pain ending all wars. Using John Stuart Mill's modified utilitarian calculus, Pain wouldn't have minimized the pain, but he would have maximized pleasure of the highest quality, that being survival, achieving the greatest good for the greatest number of people.
It goes back to someone like Lelouch's stance, who is, right, Lelouch Britannia from Code Geass. They are, the ends will justify the means. So what if 1,000 people perish if 1 million can enjoy happiness, right? That kind of logic.
The reason Pain made it so far was because he played a taboo role. He assumed a position that no one should ever assume. Pain decided to play God. When Pain covertly killed Hanzo, the villagers of the Rain saw Pain as a godly figure, or as commonly named, the savior of the world. The citizens of the Rain needed someone to lift their spirits, and Pain was that person, and he eventually began to see himself as such. But only he had the ability to perform and take on such a task. With the possession of the Rinnegan, Pain could be at multiple places at once with the 6 paths. Pain could revive the dead with the Samsara of Heavenly Life technique.
I wonder, actually, Ghetto Art of Rinne Rebirth, as it was known in the TCG, that specific jutsu, I wonder if that has a limit to it. Because we did see in the 4th Great Ninja War, where Obito was about to revive everyone that had perished in the Great Ninja War, but obviously Black Zetsu overtook Obito and thus changed that target, redirected it to Madara. So I'm very curious if, like, and it'd be such a bad plot point. And a lot of people would have had taken a lot of issue if that was how the 4th Great Ninja War ended, where Obito recognized his mistakes and revived everybody. Because at that point, it goes into the narrative, not necessarily trope, but goes into the narrative pitfall of if there's no longer stakes, if there's no longer dangers to your cast, right? What's the point, right? If you take, a lot of people will cite actually Star Wars, the sequel trilogy, using this, right? Where you have C-3PO who deletes himself, right? You have to, he has to wipe himself after doing the Sith translation, right? And you have Chewbacca who looks like he gets destroyed in the freighter, right? Those were, for all intents and purposes, very emotional points in the film. But then it's, oh, it's okay. We had a backup of C-3PO. It's not, as he technically was throughout this movie, kind of towards the beginning, maybe, but we did have a backup of him. And then we also have, it was a bait and switch where Kylo had swapped the two freighters, right? But you see how when you see them, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth, right? It just leaves you unfulfilled and unsatisfied. So in literature, in stories, in what have you, right? Media, if you have a situation where you are just ganking members of your cast, or you have stakes, right? If you use this forbidden technique, right, it will, think like 8 gates, right? It'll cause the expiration of the user. But then you have that one person that doesn't. And okay, one, I guess kind of that makes sense. Like in Mike Guy's case, right? Naruto hacks Sage's 6 paths, empowered Naruto. Okay, that's kind of fair. But if everyone starts doing it, suddenly we have an issue. And suddenly there's just no longer stakes. Your audience begins to expect this bait and switch. Your audience begins to expect, well, I mean, they're going to use this, but it never actually makes sense. It's actually kind of even another in-universe, for example, for Naruto, right? Is that, chakra exhaustion's a real thing until you get to about Kage Summit, right? Where after the pain fight, Kage Summit forward through about Final Valley, right? People only really ran out of chakra for plot convenience. Kakashi couldn't Kamui something Obito was doing and he fell to the ground. He's like, oh, I'm at my limit, despite him spamming Kamui for the past 100 chapters, right? People, kept getting amped by Naruto. You had a bunch of Edo Tensei zombies, and I guess that's maybe plot convenience for Edo Tensei zombies having infinite chakra, so thus bolstering the Alliance's chakra. But then you get to the, Valley of the End, and they finally run out of chakra, Naruto and Sasuke do, after the Indra's arrow and the dual Rasen shurikens, right? And then they have their just absolute slugfest. And a lot of people liked that slugfest. So if you, I guess, to kind of summarize on these points, if you are making a story or making a media, right? And in this can extend to games as well. And you have a hard universal truth, right? If you overexert yourself using a technique or use a specific technique, you will expect expiration. You can have certain exceptions as long as they make sense. However, if that doesn't become the norm, suddenly your audience has different expectations and their sense of disbelief just goes out the window.
Truly did play God. Even Jiraiya Sensei saw him as the reincarnation of the Sage of 6 Paths. Alongside jutsu names such as Planetary Devastation and Almighty Push, these all factored into the facade that Pain played. In consummation, I leave you with a question. Was Pain truly a villain? And was his philosophy wrong? To finally summarize Pain's philosophy is with this. You must know and feel pain in order to know peace. Pain describes the cycle of hatred as vengeance disguised as justice. Nagato as Pain's actions teaches us that we must not let our pain or the lust for vengeance fuel our motivation, because war only creates more war.
Yeah. So I would say he did become the villain because, there's the saying, right? The road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? He chose that philosophy, but there's also a double meaning, right? You could take a double meaning from that. To understand pain and to grow is to know pain. You don't necessarily have to have pain inflicted on you, right? How do people understand in modern times, right? How do people understand World War I, World War II? How do people understand, the impact of the Black Plague? How do people understand certain large historical events, right? You learn about them, you read about them, you watch documentaries and content on them, you listen to people's stories, and you begin to formulate that understanding. It doesn't take somebody saying, cool, we're going to throw you into a simulated World War I trench for you to understand how bad trench warfare was, right? And that's kind of where I fall on that. Is there's technically a grain of truth in there of you have to understand pain to you have to know it to understand it. But that knowing part can come in many different forms, while Nagato and Pain, by extension, only focused on one aspect in dishing it out. And that is what turned them into the villain and turned them to an antagonist. But I digress. What are your thoughts? I like going on about Naruto. Naruto is such a great series that I've watched, not many times, but I've watched a lot of it, theory crafted a lot of it, and obviously played the CCG. And yeah, I guess, what are your thoughts? Did you like this video? Would you like more of this content? Would you like Naruto CCG content, I guess? And yeah, make sure you go check out Sage's Reign. They do put out amazing work. Stuff like this is absolutely right up my alley. And if things like this do interest you, you should definitely go take a look at them. And I will see you in the next one.